Just checking if the stream works. I've pressed the button. Hopefully it will come on. YouTube's been very down and up in the last few days, so hopefully this will work. In fact, when I logged on to YouTube earlier, it came up with a 500 internal server error. So, if you're here, hello, happy coding. I hope you've had a good week. If you're not, then you can pick this up on the podcast, and also you can pick this up if YouTube decides to encode it, but we'll see. The stream health is looking a little bit flaky at the moment, but who knows? Let's just roll with it. So, hello. I hope you've all had a fantastic week coding. I know it's only Wednesday, but to me, this feels like I've been doing so much code in the past, say, 4 or 5 days, including the weekend, that this just feels like my Friday. Unfortunately, though, tomorrow there is more coding to be done, and so on and so forth. I tell you what, I am suffering from this dry January thing that some reason I've decided to do, so I can't actually go and have a drink and enjoy a nice smooth whiskey after a hard day's work. So I'm on the orange juice and I'm on the green tea. Yay! So what I want to do today is, we're not going to do any coding today. I want to just do a couple of announcements because there's quite a lot that is changing on the channel and also changing on the podcast. I say changing. These aren't really really changes. They're more like new things coming on. So I thought I would just do an announcement about those things. Plus, there's other bits and pieces I want to talk about, different courses and all of that good stuff. Before I even delve into any of that, though, let's go back to what I was doing about this time last week to now. Let's do a whole sort of web developers working week. This week, last week to this week, I've been working on a tremendous amount of PHP, working with one of my clients. I'm a freelance developer, and trying to move a rather large monolithic app into a series of manageable things. And it's been quite challenging. I've been on this project for some time, but recently we've come to some really nice sort of goals. And I'm not going to, due to NDAs and all of that jazz, I'm not going to talk about the ins and outs of all of these things. But what we've done is we've created a sort of a service layer, if you wish, that will allow us to communicate with various different services in this massive application. I think this application was or is at least 10 or 12 years old, so it's quite old. The first thing that we did was do some investigation work, some discovery work to actually see if these new features and upgrades were feasible. Some of them weren't, and I probably will use those kind of stories for different videos later down the line. For example, just upgrading the version of PHP was a chore, because in order to do that we had to upgrade the operating system, and we couldn't do that for reasons beyond our control. And so we were stuck with a old version of PHP for a very long time, and yet we still wanted to upgrade it at some point. So we used things like Docker to swap in different versions of PHP and so on and so forth. But the point, though, that I want to mention is that we've come to, or we've slowly got to this point where we are now in a position to package up part of the application and actually use that with other projects or for other projects, which means that putting in, say, Composer and making that as a dependency to other projects, that is really, really interesting. It's something that I haven't really done before. Although, I mean, I've done it in my own personal space, but in my own personal code, but I am the only one who's changing that. But this is like you build something that is a dependency to other things. And therefore, if you break that one thing, then there is the possibility of breaking multiple other things as well. So that's quite challenging. But really, my head in the last, say, year or so has really been in the whole microservice kind of manner, because attacking this humongous legacy application, there has been a lot of discussions, there's been a lot of work done around splitting the monolithic beast into smaller, tighter microservices, and we are now in a position of splitting those out to be shared amongst other projects that we're working on, which is pretty awesome, pretty damn awesome. So I'm digging that. And again, like I said, I'll probably use some stories that obviously are not going to be an exact replica of what I do, but some stories down the line that just sort of explain how we've tackled different legacy problems, because legacy code is just not simply code that's old, because there's so much stuff that goes along with that, including like the dependencies of the operating system, the training of the staff, the training of the users, the developers. So there's a whole bunch of things that I would like to talk about in terms of migrating legacy code. And there is also things to do with the data integrity, sort of, it's not just code, it's also data, it's also accounts, it's also, databases. Not only the fact that they are in older versions, but the actual schema is old, and that needs to be updated and transformed. And so you have to have a series of migration around that. So it's when someone says to you, "Oh, I'm working on legacy code," the code is just a small part of that. There is so much more around that. And a point that I've made before, and I'll make again, is that when you come into this industry, you will suddenly be aware of the amount of legacy code out there, because legacy code is all around us. And from my point of view, you will only be exposed to the new. I was only exposed to the new things once I actually proved my mettle to prove that I could work on legacy systems. It's a bit different for other people, I appreciate. But usually if you land a job in a fairly large company or a small to medium-sized company, you'll probably get put on the legacy stuff, working on maintenance. That way you get a feel for how the application works, how the project works, how everything hangs together. And then once you've proven your mettle that you can actually fix bugs, you actually can work within that team, within those procedures and protocols that is set out by that development team, then you will be possibly put onto projects that require new toys and new tooling and stuff like that. So there is this sort of like this weird feeling that, yes, I've just come out of a degree, or I've just done a lot of self-teaching on this particular new shiny framework, and therefore I'm going to get a job on that new shiny framework. Well, the fact of the matter is you're probably going to be working on legacy first, or at least have a lot of exposure to it. So that's basically what I've been sort of playing with in the last week or so. It's been really interesting, really fascinating stuff to get into under the bonnet of all of these things and upgrade them. And as a freelancer, it feels really nice that not only are you providing a service that will make sure the application runs as it should be, but will also run as it should be in several years' time, which is awesome, which is great, which is what I dig. Now, this is so weird because I'm using a completely different camera. I'm usually looking at the webcam here, not this DSLR. So I hope this looks good or looks slightly better. Although this is a live stream, so that is a bit weird. So let's now talk about the announcements that I've got going on. We have quite a few interviews on the podcast that are waiting to go out, and I'm really excited about this. when I approached these people, I was very sort of I didn't think that they would accept the invitations, and I'm so honored that they have done. The first one, the first one I did was Jeremy Onion. That was about a month ago. He's a good friend of mine. Worked with him at Fast Hosts, and he's now a technical director at the Torpedo Group. Now, he's got some extremely varied experience with web development and also managing teams. So that was a really interesting talk, just from my personal point of view, to hear what he was doing and how he has progressed since I left Fast Host those many years ago. So that was really good. And I'll put links in the show notes below to that. But we've got a few more coming up. The next one is this Friday. So this at the moment is Wednesday. So in a few days' time, it's with a chap called Tom Vorel, and Tom is a self-taught developer. He has just very recently, and I say very recently, I had the chat with him on the same week as he started his new job as a React developer. So that was immensely interesting to listen to his perspective. He hadn't done a degree in web development or coding or computer science. It was pure self-teaching, and he was talking about the ways he was teaching, what he was learning, the way he would move from one thing to the next thing, knowing that he had understood that, which was very fascinating. And it was really refreshing to hear him talk about web development and coding in an extremely passionate way. Passionate and hunger basically flew from him. He was obviously extremely hungry to learn more information, learn how to code differently, improve himself and his projects. And yeah, he was over the moon because it was literally that week he had moved into a React developer job. So that was fantastic. That is coming out on Friday, this Friday. The next Friday, which is the 25th, so not this Friday, but the next Friday, there is an interview which is roughly an hour long. The one with Tom was about 45 minutes. This one is with a guy called Adam Culp. Now, if you're a PHP developer, you will probably know who Adam Culp is. And the fact that I've got him on the channel is fantastic. And the stuff we were talking about was just so absorbing and just very, very incredibly interesting. He is the organizer at Sunshine PHP, which is a conference in Miami. He's also a Zend consultant. And so he works, again, on lots of legacy stuff. So we had some really interesting information, some conversations about that. And he's also a speaker. So he's spoken at like hundreds of conferences. And we were just talking about, his speaking and how he got into speaking and how he deals with nerves and all of that stuff, which is very interesting to me, being someone who would like to do more speaking at some point. That was extremely, extremely interesting. So we spoke for about an hour-ish. He's also got a YouTube channel called Beachcasts. So we were talking about that too. And he's on Twitch as well, so you can check that out too. I've also got some other interviews planned in the future. I'm not going to talk about those too much today, just in case anything, life could get in the way. But I have been getting my sort of the feelers out and asking various different people. And there was a few comments that came back, because what I would like to do ideally is to have a sort of a conversation in a video form, and then take the audio from that and put that on the podcast. Which has worked out very well so far. However, there are a few people who have who've got back in touch with me after I've asked them if they want to be on the podcast, and they've suggested, or they've asked, that they don't actually want to be on the video. They just want to be as audio, which is perfectly fine. And this is one of the many reasons why I've started to do these interviews. It's because you can talk to people who wouldn't necessarily like to be videoed, but they are extremely interesting characters, and they lead extremely interesting development jobs, or have interesting stories to tell. So I've been asking lots of people, and we have a number of things scheduled up in the future. So I'm dead excited. And if this continues, then hopefully it will be a regular thing. Hopefully, and it'll be, say, on the Fridays, where I have an interview, a guest coming on board. Now, at the moment, as it stands, we have Jeremy Onion, who is a technical director. We have Tom Vorel, who is a junior React developer, and we have Adam Culp, who is the conference organizer, a Zend consultant, and so much more, a speaker. So it's kind of like there hasn't been a particular theme that is manifesting. And I quite like that. I don't want to be sort of pigeonholed quite yet. And the people who I've spoken to so far for the future interviews, they also come from sort of very different backgrounds. I don't want to just talk to PHP developers. I don't want to just talk to Python developers. I don't want to just talk to senior developers or junior developers. I want to talk to developers, and I want to talk to people who are loosely connected to the web development industry. So perhaps we could talk to maybe recruitment agents and get their take on how they recruit web developers. I think that would be incredibly interesting. And we could talk to perhaps testers, so penetration testers, QA testers. We could talk to people who build applications for web developers, and we could talk to people who work solely in the open source community. Basically, this is like a big open door, and I would like to welcome as many people in as possible. I don't want to be, I certainly don't want to turn anyone down at this stage. And I think that it's going to be very, very interesting. There is obviously a caveat to this. A little bit of caution has to be made because, of course, if you do one thing one week and something completely different the next week, then you have no level of consistency. So we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. But speaking of Sunshine PHP and Adam Culp, I am going to Sunshine PHP this year. So that is a conference all about PHP in Miami. And yes, I will be taking my camera gear with me, which will be awesome. I've never been there before, and it's gonna be packed full of really interesting talks, and I'm gonna be sort of almost vlogging, I guess. I don't really like that term. Videoing about the talks that I've seen, the thoughts that I've had from those. And yeah, we'll just see how it goes. But I really wanted to do at least one international conference this year. And as you know, international conferences are very expensive. Not only do you have to pay for the conference itself, but you also have to pay for the flights and the transport and the hotel. So yeah, it is very expensive. In fact, the conference cost is just the smallest part of going to America. So so that's the one I've chosen, and I sat down with all of the conferences that were available that I was aware of, and it just, out of coincidence, I managed to get an interview with Adam Culp beforehand, before actually going to there. So it's going to be interesting. So yeah, so look out for those. It'll probably be some point at the mid-end of February where I release these videos of me in a very sunny area. So that's that announcement. There are a couple of other talks that I personally would like to do. I haven't done one this year. I think I should. And speaking to Adam was very inspirational, and getting some feedback and tips on his speaking career and what the advice that he could give me as well was really, really interesting. So if you're considering doing something like that, then do check out that podcast on the 25th. And also, if you are a self-taught developer, or if you are teaching yourself code right now and you are aspiring to be a developer, it doesn't matter if it's a front-end developer, certainly doesn't matter if it's a back-end developer. Hey, it doesn't even matter if you're a DBA. If you're stuck in a rut and you want to hear some really inspirational words from someone who has gone through and climbed this massive self-teaching mountain, who talks straight, then do check out Tom Vorel's podcast interview this Friday, because my word, that was a very inspirational thing. It made me want to write code, so that was really good. And I hope you guys enjoy it too. It's very interesting, especially when you speak to someone who is just so passionate about what they do. You just feed off of it, don't you? So that's cool. Another thing that I've been doing recently, and I have literally just got off the chat to one of my publishers, is that I've been working very, very hard on my new course that will be available very, very soon for Python. This is a packed publishing course. It's all about Python and microservices. If you've been following me on Twitter, and if you've been following me on, say, Instagram, you'll get some sort of little sneaky peeks, shall we say, of the course and how the course is progressing. So it's coming to the point where the code is ready, the videos are sorted. It's just basically now sort of coming together of all the stuff. So I'm really dead excited. And off of the back of that, there is some other videos that I would like to do. This isn't by any means the announcement video. That is one video that I would like to do, a sole video just announcing the course, and talking about what it involves and the sections involved and so on and so forth. But also I want to do some other videos around the particular code and the choice of coding that I did in the tools that I used. Obviously not touching upon anything to do with the raw core parts of the course itself, because that's in the course, but to talk about the course from a sort of an abstract point of view, and maybe using some of the code examples, or using the applications that we built in that course for other things, and talking about how we got to that point. It's on microservices. It's about Python. There is a whole section on there about Docker as well, and security, and so on and so forth. But I will be doing a big announcement video on this separately when it is ready. But I've been working tirelessly in the last, say, few weeks on this, really late in the evenings, deadly early in the mornings, and unfortunately it's one of these things you can't really plan, because when you're a freelancer and you've got lots of projects going on, and you've got projects and deadlines coming up, you can't drop balls. You've got to keep the plate spinning, and this week has been extremely tough because there has been several deadlines for clients as well as this. So it was, it's bound to happen. It's just the way it is, isn't it? And of course we had, I won't talk about it in great detail, but something went horribly wrong. And so I had to fix bits and pieces. So that was solved, and that just ate into time. Unfortunately, you only have 24 hours of a day. I would love to have more. And supposedly you're supposed to be asleep for a large portion of that, but that's what my wife keeps telling me anyway. So yeah, that's basically the announcements that I want to mention. The course in a very loose sense, the interviews that we're doing. And I should say that if you want to be interviewed, then just get in touch, because, like I said, it's a complete open door policy here. If you want to talk about something, then do use this platform as an opportunity to talk about something, regardless of whether it's positive or negative. If it's something that you've just learned and you would like to share it, if you fancy if you want to be a blogger, but you're not very good at writing, but you're good at talking, then come on and talk. And it's great because other people can feed off of your energy as well, and you're just helping the community out. I think this is a great way of teaching other people and explaining things. And I think the podcast has taken off really, really well. And thank you very much for tuning in. And it's one of these things that you can just listen to and digest. And it's something that you don't have to be on the video. You could just be on the audio. And there's no requirement as to your skill level or your position or what kind of thing you do, in terms of web, as long as it's to do with web development, as long as it's connected in some way, or connected to the very least at coding. So even if that's recruiting coders or actually writing the Linux kernel, that's kind of like the breadth of the spectrum, if you will. And I'll be down for a chat, and I'm pretty sure that you could teach me a thing or two as well. But anyway, guys, thank you ever so much for listening. If you're listening on the podcast, and if you're watching here on YouTube, I will check the feed after this, make sure that the quality is okay. If it is, then I will push it up to the podcast and also here on YouTube. Thank you ever so much for watching, guys. Happy coding, everyone. I'll see you again soon. I'll see you on Friday with Tom Vorel. Cheers. Bye.